Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Shan and this is what I read in November. I started off the month with The Book of Dust because I knew that His Dark Materials was coming to BBC and I was really excited to watch it, but it's not that long since I read the His Dark Materials trilogy, so I thought, you know what, let's go with The Book of Dust, which I hadn't ever read before. My sister sent me after my operation, so I thought, right, come on, let's crack on, read The Book of Dust and see how how Lyra's journey started. And I loved this book. I didn't write a review on Goodreads because I loved it so much. I genuinely didn't quite know how I could express my love for this book. I don't know if I loved it especially because I knew it was coming onto TV and I would be able to see it all soon, but I just thought it was an absolutely fabulous book. So this goes back to the very beginning. It's set in Oxford, which is where I was brought up, so it's kind of, you know, I know the reference points, which is always kind of exciting. Set in Oxford, and it is surrounded by kind of mystery, intrigue. There's a young boy called Malcolm who is on his canoe called the Belle Sauvage, and he ends up seeing something that he shouldn't have. He ends up seeing kind of the build-up to a murder of a man, and he obviously becomes intrigued, and he finds this little acorn which has a note written inside it, really hard to find, and he becomes embroiled in what is going on surrounding Dust. His dad owns a pub, so he's often kind of privy to some conversations that maybe he shouldn't otherwise hear. He also helps out at the local nunnery. He helps them, and he is kind of influenced by the Egyptians, who are the people who live on the waterways, and he believes them when they say there's a flood coming, and he makes sure that he prepares for that. And it's all about how Lyra came to be in the hands of Jordan College and where she started off before that. It's full of like murder, mystery, intrigue. It's a children's book, but it is definitely one that can be read on so many different levels, and I absolutely loved it. I think I've probably told you that enough now. The second book I read this month is Undivided by Neal Shusterman. Now this is the fourth one in a series of books. The first one I started as part of the Bookish Mamas book club, and I've just carried on reading all of them. I think this one and the first one were my favourite books. This is the last book, I believe, and it kind of rounds up everything that's happening. You have Cam, who's the person who has been made out of other people, who has been kind of sold to the US Army, and they are basically trying to make warriors. They're trying to make people out of people's parts, and they're going to be an army, and the army will be filled with these people who are not technically people because they're made up of lots of bits of other people, so whether or not they have a soul is kind of questionable. And you've got Proactive Citizenry, who are the company kind of behind all of that. Then you've got Connor and Risa, and they are continuing in their fight. You've got Starkey, who is the one who kind of went totally AWOL. He has been blowing up these harvest camps, which is where children are kept before they're unwound. Obviously he has, like, I don't know if he technically has good intentions, but it doesn't really come out as good intentions. So you're kind of following them, and you've also got Hayden added into the mix of this, and also Lev, who is the one who initially in the first book it was Risa, Connor and Lev, and it's kind of rounds up how they all kind of are and where they all are currently. It's a really good book. I really enjoyed how it kind of combined all the other books, how you've got different perspectives throughout the book. I find that really kind of helps the book to flow quite quickly. None of them, they're all kind of interconnected, so you know what's going on all the time. You don't get lost, you don't get confused. And again, this is another book I just didn't want to end because it was the final one in the series, so I was a bit sad to finish this one, but only sad because I enjoyed it so much. I've now bought, or in fact someone has bought for me for Christmas, Neal Shusterman's Scythe series, so I will see I can get to carry on reading his books because I really do enjoy them. Again, this is young adult fiction, and I really enjoyed it. The third book I read this month is Three Women by Lisa Taddeo, and this has a lot of hype around it, and I was lent this by a friend when I'd had my operation and decided I was going to read it. It's an honest and open account of three different women's sexual lives, and I'll be honest, I found it a bit depressing. I found the sexual inequality in each of their stories really just sad, that this is still like, out of all the three women this person could have chosen to have their stories in the book, the three she chose were so, I don't know, there was no sexual equality, and I found that really just grated with me. I found it a really interesting book, but I did end up feeling sorry for all of the women involved, which I don't think the author intended. So for me, I think it just missed the mark a bit, but I know so many people are raving about this book, so I really wanted to like it, but I also, I don't know, I just thought it would be more of a kind of expose on sexual equality, and maybe it is, in that there is very little sexual equality, but I just found it really missed the mark with me. And the fourth and final book I read this month is one of the prettiest books I've ever received. It's called The Heavens by Sandra Newman. And again, this one, it started really well. I was really excited. You're kind of thrown in, you meet all these new characters. It's the year 2000. There's a lot of hope for the future. And you've got a slightly strange, I don't know, she's not a strange character. There's a character called Kate, who when she goes to sleep, she in essence time travels back to a different time where she is a specific character, and any action she does back in that previous world affect the outcome in the current world. So small things change, and sometimes really huge things. So for example, Kate at one point has a brother, and then after she's gone back in time, she then doesn't have a brother. She meets Will Shakespeare and they have a romance, I guess it can be called, and he is kind of a struggling playwright. He's not really getting far with anything, and then when she goes back, he's famous, but when she's back in this world, no one had heard of him. It's all kind of, I really loved the concept, and I thought it was going to be like blow me away, brilliant, but actually I got a bit lost when she was back in the older worlds, because there was a lot of kind of Old English language, a lot of Shakespearean language, and I found that quite hard to follow. That's not necessarily a type of writing that I would normally sit down and read. So the concept was brilliant. I loved the fact that she did travel back in time in her dreams, because I'm someone who totally like lucid dreams and has really weird and wonderful dreams. So the fact that someone might kind of, you know, the fact that I might be going and changing the future through the past. I mean, it's all very kind of Doctor Who and changing the space-time continuum, and yeah, I did enjoy the concept, and I did enjoy most of the book, but I just found by the end I was a bit like, okay, can we finish it now? Because also you kind of don't know by the end whether it was a dream or she was a time traveller or anything, so it's like, okay, alright, well that's the end then. I don't know, I just felt a bit lost by the end, which was frustrating because I'd loved it so much at the beginning, and it also definitely gets top marks for being the most beautiful book ever. But yes, it's all about kind of the butterfly effect and how changing one thing can have a huge impact on so much else. But yeah, I'd read it. I'd recommend reading it just to kind of see your views on it and to see what your perceptions of it are, because it would be interesting to see what other people have thought about it. So if you have read it, let me know. Only 4 books this month, which is probably a good thing. I have enjoyed reading. They were quite big books actually, and the Book of Dust, I didn't want it to end, so I read it really slowly because I was just like, no, it's gonna be the end, it's gonna be over. So yeah, I did read that quite slowly. I will see you again in January with my December update. Okay, bye.